I never imagined that the life I shared with Mark, the life I thought was steady and safe, could be pulled out from under me so quietly. We had our routines, our little jokes, the kind of familiarity that makes you feel untouchable. For years, I trusted him completely, never doubting that what we had was real. But over the past few months, I began noticing things, small, subtle shifts that unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Late nights at work, whispered phone calls, sudden defensiveness whenever I asked a question. I told myself it was paranoia, that maybe I was imagining problems where none existed. Yet the unease refused to fade. The truth finally hit me like a brick the day I found an email that wasn't meant for my eyes. A casual, intimate message from a woman I'd never met. I froze, heart pounding, stomach twisting, as I realized the life I thought I knew was built on deception. This is the story of betrayal, quiet suffering, and the careful, patient steps of revenge I took to reclaim what was mine, and how karma quietly found its way back to the one who tried to break me. I never thought the life I built with Mark could shatter so quietly. For years, I'd believed in us, in the comfort of our routines and the small things that made our life feel like home. I woke up to him every morning, kissed him goodbye, laughed at his jokes, and we even had our little rituals. The Saturday coffee, the midweek walks, the way he always left me a note in my bag. It felt unshakable. Until slowly, the cracks began to appear. At first, I dismissed them. The late nights at work, the whispered phone calls in the other room, the sudden need for privacy when he had always been open. I told myself I was imagining things, that jealousy was clouding my perception. But the signs kept stacking up: lipstick on his collar, a text that flashed, "Can't wait to see you tonight," the fleeting guilt in his eyes whenever I entered the room unexpectedly. I began keeping a mental list, a quiet tally of moments that didn't make sense. I tried to confront my feelings internally, forcing myself to believe I was overreacting. Then came the day I found the email. It was casual, almost careless, sent from a woman I'd never met. It was full of intimate plans, inside jokes that didn't belong in my life, a familiarity that made my chest tighten. My hands shook as I scrolled through it. My stomach dropped. The betrayal settled like ice in my veins. I realized he had been living a double life and I had been blind. Questions raced through my mind, none with answers, all echoing the same painful truth. I remembered the nights he came home late, the vague excuses, the way he avoided eye contact, and suddenly, every detail connected like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to finish. I felt hollowed out, as if the air in our home had changed, carrying only silence and suspicion. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the first quiet steps I would take. Rushing would ruin everything, acting impulsively would only hand him the upper hand. I needed clarity, patience, proof. I needed to plan. And then my phone buzzed, a message from him that would change everything. "Hey, I'm running a bit late. Don't wait up." I froze, feeling a mix of anger and cold calculation. I typed a casual reply, hiding the storm inside me. "Okay, see you when you get home." The next few days became a careful dance. I watched him closely, noting inconsistencies, paying attention to details I had once ignored. I noticed the way he laughed a little too hard at certain messages, the subtle flinch whenever I approached him while he was on the phone. One evening, he left a receipt sticking out of his jacket pocket, a dinner for two, addressed to a name I didn't recognize. I asked casually, "Oh, who's dinner with?" He gave a small laugh, "Oh, just a work thing." But the way his eyes darted told me otherwise. My heart raced, not with fear but with a quiet determination. I realized I had to gather evidence, not confront him head-on. If I wanted justice, I had to be patient, observant, and careful. I installed a tiny security camera in the living room, hidden where only I would know, capturing his comings and goings. I traced credit card transactions, noting small indulgences, mysterious gifts, dinner reservations. Each piece of evidence added clarity, confirming what I already feared. The guilt and tension between us became almost tangible. One night over dinner I asked casually, "Did you see the email from work today?" He hesitated, then shook his head, smiling. That small lie fueled the fire inside me. I knew it was time to plan quietly, to let him continue his double life, while I collected every proof and calculated every move. Days turned into weeks, and I watched him start to slip in small ways. He left his phone unattended, forgot to erase a browser history, glanced nervously when I entered the room unexpectedly. Each slip was a piece of the puzzle, and I cataloged it meticulously. I rehearsed conversations in my head, thinking about what I would say, what I would show, and how I would let the truth unfold at the perfect time. I reminded myself constantly, revenge wasn't about anger. It was about justice, about balance, about reclaiming the life he had tried to steal from me. Late one night, I caught him staring at his phone in the dark, smiling at messages he thought were private. I slid into the room quietly. Everything okay? He jumped, almost dropping the phone. Yeah, just work stuff. But the hesitation, the tiny stammer, it betrayed him. I didn't say anything, just nodded and left, my mind already turning over the next step. I realized I had changed. I was no longer the naive woman who trusted blindly. I was quiet, calculated, patient, and ready to reclaim my peace. By the end of the week, I had enough information to start shaping the first real confrontation, but I chose not to act impulsively. I wanted him to feel the weight of his choices slowly, to sense the tension without knowing the source. I spoke casually about my day, about friends, about life, while silently plotting the moments where truth would slip through the cracks. My anger was quiet, simmering, but precise. I knew patience would make the reveal more powerful, more satisfying. The betrayal had shaken me, but it had also sharpened me. I spent another evening reviewing all the collected evidence, each message, each receipt, each suspicious call. I visualized the confrontation, imagining how his denial would sound, how I would respond, how the shock would hit him when he realized I knew everything. I practiced calm, steady tones, practiced silence, practiced letting him talk himself into deeper guilt. I reminded myself that every reaction mattered, every hesitation could be used to my advantage. This wasn't just about exposing him, it was about reclaiming control, about showing that deception could never win against patience and precision. Then came the small breakthrough. He left his laptop open while in the kitchen. A casual glance revealed a string of messages between him and the woman I now knew as his mistress. My chest tightened. I felt fury, sadness, and a cold clarity all at once. I printed the messages quietly, cataloged them, and returned them without a trace. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. I had confirmed everything, yet the emotional cost was real. I realized that betrayal cuts deeper than anger can ever reach. Later, I confronted him casually about the receipt. Hey, this came in the mail, I said lightly, holding it up. Dinner for two, who's the lucky person? He froze. Oh, it's just a colleague. I smiled softly. You've mentioned a few colleagues, but this one seems special. He laughed nervously. No, it's nothing really. But the hesitation, the way he avoided eye contact, spoke volumes. I let the silence sit heavily between us, allowing him to feel the tension without me saying much. I realized that in this quiet observation, I had power. Power that he had never given me, but I had quietly seized. At night, I lay awake, thinking about the coming days. I imagined confronting him with evidence, imagining the shock, the disbelief, the remorse. I imagined a moment where he would truly understand the depth of his betrayal, not just through words, but through the quiet force of preparation and proof. I reminded myself to stay patient, to wait for the perfect moment, to act only when it would matter most. Every detail, every slip, every overlooked clue would contribute to the unveiling of the truth. The first step had been taken. The evidence was collected, the patience cultivated, and the emotional resolve strengthened. I felt the cold thrill of anticipation. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, waits, and grows. And I knew, deep down, that when the moment came, the revelation would be undeniable, leaving no room for denial or deflection. My heart raced, not with fear but with determination. I had been blindsided by betrayal, but now I was quietly, methodically, reclaiming what was mine. That night, as I stared at the ceiling, the house quiet around me, my phone buzzed once more. A simple message from him. Can we talk tomorrow? I feel like something's off. I smiled faintly, the weight of all I had discovered pressing against me like a shield. The trap was set. The quiet revenge had begun. And little did he know, the first move was already in motion, one that would change everything he thought he knew about us. I kept the email hidden, letting Mark believe I was still oblivious. He moved around the house with the usual confidence, completely unaware of how closely I was observing him. I installed a tiny security camera in the living room, the one he passed every day, and began monitoring his routines meticulously. Each night blurred into the next as I documented his comings and goings, the stolen phone calls, and whispered conversations through the walls. I traced his credit card statements, noting extravagant purchases, expensive dinners, and gifts that didn't match any occasion he had mentioned. It all built a map of his secret life, confirming the betrayal I already suspected. One evening, a receipt caught my attention, a dinner reservation for two under a name I didn't know. I felt a cold clarity that replaced fear entirely. That night when he returned from work, I greeted him casually. "Long day?" I asked. He smiled a little too brightly and shrugged. "Yeah, nothing special." I placed the receipt on the counter and mentioned, almost casually, "Found this in your jacket. Dinner for two. Must be a work thing." He froze, stammered, Yeah, just a colleague." I didn't push further, only let the silence settle heavily between us. The tension was electric, and I could see the first cracks forming in his carefully constructed mask. Over the next few days, I observed his behavior carefully. He avoided certain rooms, picked up his phone quickly, and sometimes forgot simple things, like closing tabs or erasing messages. Each slip was another confirmation, another detail to use later. I practiced my casual, unsuspecting demeanor, speaking lightly about my day, about friends, about life, while silently cataloging every misstep. I reminded myself that this was about patience and precision, not anger. One evening, I confronted him about lipstick on his collar. "Mark, this isn't yours, right?" I asked softly. He laughed nervously. "Oh, that probably from someone at work." I tilted my head, smiling faintly. "It's funny how work leaves traces, isn't it?" He chuckled uncomfortably. "Yeah, maybe." The hesitation, the avoidance of eye contact, confirmed everything. I let him breathe in the tension, letting the guilt weigh on him quietly. I even tested him with subtle mentions of messages I knew he thought were private. "Funny, someone sent me a text. Thought it was from you, but it wasn't," I said casually one afternoon. He tensed, laughed nervously, and asked, "Who?" I shrugged. "Doesn't matter, but it reminded me how little we really know about what happens outside our little world." He laughed weakly. "Yeah, true." But I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. Days passed, and I grew more confident in my quiet control. I invited friends over, carefully observing how Mark interacted around people he thought were unaware of his lies. I planted tiny hints, subtle reminders of inconsistencies, just enough to make him question if someone else knew. I reached out to the mistress under a false pretense, feigning naivety, to let her reveal what she thought was hidden. Every revelation, every slip, was a calculated step forward. The first confrontation came unexpectedly. I asked him about a dinner receipt casually, holding it lightly between my fingers. "This looks fancy, special night." He froze, then laughed weakly. "Oh, just work, like I said." I tilted my head. "Work dinners are expensive, huh? Must be nice." The silence was heavy. "Yeah, I guess," he muttered. I let him stew in it, letting the tension do what words never could. The days that followed were a careful dance. I documented every interaction, every suspicious move. I cataloged messages, photos, receipts, everything. I watched him slip, trying to maintain his facade, while I carefully planned the next step. I reminded myself constantly, patience would make the reveal more powerful. The betrayal had shaken me, but it had also sharpened me. By the end of the second week, I had enough proof to confront him fully, but I waited. I wanted him to feel the tension, the guilt, the slow unraveling of the web he had spun. I practiced calm, steady tones, practiced silence, practiced letting him talk himself into deeper guilt. Each hesitation, each small lie added to my advantage. The night I finally hinted at knowing everything, I did so with casual precision. "Funny how secrets have a way of coming out," I said lightly over dinner. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth, eyes wide. What do you mean?" he stammered. I smiled faintly. "Oh, nothing yet." That small phrase hung between us, heavy with implication. I realized then that the first real cracks had appeared. The tension was almost unbearable, yet exhilarating. I had taken control quietly, without confrontation, letting him believe he still had power. I knew that the next steps had to be measured, patient, and precise. I reminded myself constantly, revenge was not about impulsive action. It was about justice, balance, and reclaiming what he had tried to steal. And as I watched him retreat into his bedroom that night, guilt and confusion etched across his face, I knew the real game had just begun. The trap was set, the pieces were in place, and the quiet revenge I had begun would unfold exactly as I planned. Little did he know, patience had become my most powerful weapon, and every lie he had told would soon meet its inevitable exposure. For weeks, I moved quietly, letting him slip deeper into his false comfort while I orchestrated every detail of my revenge. I invited friends over, curated situations where his lies would surface, and even planted subtle evidence that would make him second-guess who could be watching. I reached out to the mistress under the guise of being naive, letting her reveal everything she thought was hidden. Every step was calculated, measured, and satisfying in a way that felt more like justice than anger. I saw him start to unravel in small ways: hesitations, distracted glances, the way he avoided certain conversations. But I held back the full reveal. I observed him as he tried to maintain the facade, watching him carefully as guilt built like a storm inside him. I planted messages in places he would see, casually mentioned things to friends that hinted at hidden knowledge, all to make him feel the tension I had been cultivating silently. The final twist came during a dinner party, surrounded by friends who trusted him, when I casually brought up someone's secret meetings and let the pieces fall. Their disbelief, his guilt, the shock on her face, it was electric. I watched as he tried to explain, to spin the story in his favor, but every attempt fell flat. I had saved one final piece of proof, something irrefutable, hidden where only I could control it. As he panicked, pleading, I realized I had become someone entirely different: quiet, patient, and terrifyingly precise. I had transformed betrayal into a tool, crafting a response that was controlled, intelligent, and ultimately satisfying. The quiet revenge had become an art. Then, as I prepared to deliver the final blow to his pride, my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. It was from someone I hadn't expected, someone deeply entwined in the betrayal, someone who knew far more than even I had imagined. The realization hit me like a punch. The story wasn't over, and the next step would change everything I thought I knew. The message was from Mark's closest friend, confessing he had known about everything long before I did, and had even covered for Mark in small ways. The betrayal wasn't just from Mark, it had been woven into my entire circle, testing my patience, my perception, my resolve. I felt a sharp sting of disbelief, followed by a strange clarity. I realized the ultimate revenge wasn't public humiliation or confrontation, but stepping away entirely, leaving Mark to unravel in the quiet, empty spaces of his own making. I moved out, leaving behind subtle reminders of what he had lost, the evidence of his deception carefully catalogued in ways he couldn't retrieve. The house felt different, empty, but liberating. Over time, Mark began to feel the sting of loneliness, the isolation that comes when lies collapse and truth lingers in every corner. Watching from afar, I saw karma take its natural course, not flashy or vengeful, but inevitable and far more satisfying than anger could ever be. I learned that silence can speak louder than confrontation, and patience can become its own form of justice. Betrayal may cut deep, but how we respond defines the power we reclaim. As I finally closed the door behind me, I understood that the quiet revenge I orchestrated had done more than expose a secret. It had restored my peace, my sense of control, and my faith in the fact that truth, when wielded patiently, always finds its way. This story is a reminder that betrayal can come from the people we trust most, and the pain it leaves behind can feel endless. But revenge isn't always about confrontation or chaos. It can be quiet, calculated, and deeply satisfying when approached with patience and precision. Sometimes the best justice is letting the truth reveal itself naturally while reclaiming your own peace along the way. Mark's lies, the hidden affairs, and the secrets that once seemed untouchable ultimately